are going to move on to our next presentation. So, Elaine, can you say hello?
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here.
Well, as you pull up your slides, could you give us a self-introduction?
Sure. Let me just concentrate to pull the right thing up. Let me make sure that works. And
Oh, that looks fantastic. Thank you.
does it? Okay, okay. Because it never looks quite right when you're when you're the presenter. So I'm Elaine Russell Rialfi. I'm so glad to be here today with you. I am it feels like Chelsea read my whole presentation, that we consulted for hours and that she teed me up just beautifully. So thank you, Chelsea. That was awesome. And really, I'm going to carry on what you kind of started for us, especially when it starts with bad bosses. My background. So I am the president and CEO of ComQuest, which is a behavioral health organization in Northeast Ohio. And I've been here 3 years, spent most of my career in the for-profit public company space, mainly in manufacturing. And I wanted to tell you today a little bit about my career transition, what I've learned about leadership, and what I've learned from other women leaders. So I'll just dive right into it if we're ready. Yeah. Okay. So let me take you back about 15, 18, 20, I don't know, remember how many years ago. So I was at a point in my career where I was up for a big promotion. I'd had a really fun and satisfying career, growing with promotion and more responsibility and the opportunity to do really awesome things all around the world, and really was enjoying my career. And I got a shot at a senior executive role, kind of the right hand of the CEO. And I didn't get the job. And the CEO sat down with me. It was a big disappointment for me because I was kind of an overachiever, was moving fast. And that was the moment where I thought, whoa, wait a minute, what happened? So he sat me down and he said, Elaine, I want to tell you why I picked the other person for this job. That person will yell at me. She'll get in my face. She'll be aggressive. She'll force me to listen. And I reacted to that and sort of said, well, you and I have a good relationship. We're very direct. I always am fact-based and analytical, and I present to you, good recommendations. And can't we just look each other in the eye and talk? And his response to me was this: I need someone to kick me in the shin. And internally, my first reaction to that was, ugh. And I realized in that moment, and perhaps it took that moment for me to realize that all of this was more about him than my competencies for that job. If you really think about all the language that he used with me, yelling at him, getting in his face, forcing him, ew, right? That wasn't really the relationship I wanted to have with the CEO I was supporting, and just thought it was that kind of approach to things was sort of unnecessary. And it was the way he was leading with everybody else too. But it made me realize that this was more about him than it was about me. And in that moment, I felt a sense of deflation and rejection. But then I realized, no, that's wrong. There is a better way to do things. And that better way had been carrying me through my career and bringing me a lot of success. And more importantly, the teams I was part of success and the company's success, by taking an approach that was creative and had mutual gain for all parties, all stakeholders, that had a sense of justness, that has a sense of intrinsic motivation, and most importantly, delivered results. And it was a moment of reflection for me that really changed the course of things. So I want to tell you a little bit about the sixth level, which is the name of my presentation, because what I came to find out was that it wasn't just me or some of the role models I had. Lots of people manage in this way. So let me take a step back to this book I contributed to. And let me just say right up front, I have no financial interest in this book. I'm a contributor to it. Meredith, who's here today as well, same with her. She's a contributor to the book. But in 1971, when I was just 5 years old, so I wasn't aware this was happening, but Dr. Jean Baker Miller did research on women and their leadership style. And she discovered unique social and psychological qualities that advance women's leadership effectiveness. And so fast forward many years later, and 4 authors on the book, who turned out to be authors on the book, came together and they said, we feel like we're seeing this in good women leaders, this research kind of embodied in women leaders. Let's write a book about this. Let's document this. And Dr. Stacy Feiner reached out to me. I didn't know her before that moment, but reached out to me and said, can you write a leadership narrative? Tell us about a time that, you know, you had a leadership challenge and how you solved it. And they asked me to pitch them a few ideas, which I did, and they picked one. They asked 15 other people as well to do this, probably more than that actually, but and Meredith being one of them, who's on the call today. And didn't tell, I think, any of us a lot about the research and the theory. They just asked us to write about leadership. And the amazing thing was we all wrote stories that supported the theory, because organically, that's how we led. Now, this book is based on a study of women, but it's not a women's book. It's inspiring to anyone who wants to be a good leader. I've seen men exhibit these qualities, but more often women exhibit these qualities. So let me tell you a little bit about the book, and then I'll tell you my story. So the first thing, just what is the sixth level? So you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The concept is that self-actualization, the top of that pyramid, is not the end, that there's actually a sixth level past that, that is self in relation, to learn about oneself through the world and the world through the eyes of another, and going through the world with mutuality and care. So that's a definition of the sixth level. If we look a little bit deeper, you see what is often an experience based on gender growing up from birth all the way through life, which I think, again, Chelsea talked a bit about in her comments. But, you know, there are people who, and often men, who are raised and socialized to dominate, that it's about winning, it's about competition. And many women are socialized for mutuality, the idea that we can all win together if we work together, which brings an ethic of care, engaging people for input, just a whole different style. So that's the concept. And then what that leads to in a good leader is kind of a toggling effect between analysis and empathy. So this concept of the sixth level isn't soft, it isn't nice, it isn't gentle, it isn't worried about hurting people's feelings. It's good, solid business. It's about being empathetic. It's about understanding people, understanding employees, understanding customers, stakeholders, and engaging other people in leading together. So this brings me to my chapter. And before I get into my chapter, that's my sweet little 91-year-old mother. She's the reason I'm still in Northeast Ohio, because she's still kicking around. My parents were immigrants. I don't know if we have any others on the line today who are the children of immigrants, but it is an experience that many of us find similarities in. Immigrants are often scrappy. They've, worked hard to get their families to another country. They're practical. They want to make sure things are stable. They have big ideas and big dreams, but stay practical, right? So my mom, when I told her that I wanted, and I should say, I'm not just a first generation American, I'm a first generation to go to college. And they made sure we all went to college, even though they didn't get to. But I told her I wanted to major in journalism, and she was horrified. And she said, how about nursing? A nurse will always have a job. She didn't know what kind of job I was going to get with a degree in writing, but it turned out okay, Mom. I say that because I have 3 kids, and they have the advantage of a privilege that neither my mom nor I had, of having a few more options because life is a little more stable for them. So that was my sort of precursor to the story of where I am today. So 3 kids in their mid-20s, there they are. I found myself telling them, as they got to go to great colleges, all 3 of them, great colleges, all majoring in different things. I kept telling them, you don't have to chase someone else's idea of success. You need to make career decisions based on something you care about. Again, very different than what my mom was saying to me, because she was like, financial stability and health insurance, I want them to have all that too. But they already had great degrees from great colleges. They were going to have more options than we would have had. And I found myself, as I was coaching them, that I started to listen to them. So once you hit the point in your life, if you've got kids, where you get them through college, you start to feel a little bit of weightlifting. You all, those of you who have kids know how expensive daycare is. Then, you maybe they go to private schools and that's expensive. Then they go to college and that's expensive. So it's a sort of a relief when you get them all the way through. Well, it turns out all three of them did listen in their own ways. That's Rachel. She has degrees in engineering and public policy. She actually works at the White House. She's a senior policy advisor. Johnny got a degree in fashion design, and he just got his first professional job as a design assistant. And the third one there is Aiden. He works at EY in Cleveland. So I don't know if we have any EY people here, but if you know Aiden Rialfi, you tell him you saw him dressed like that in a picture in his mom's presentation. So what does it mean that I listened? I decided to blow up my career. I decided that I'm on this track, this executive track. You've got all your variable pay and your bonuses. You got all this thing that the money starts to happen for you when you get at that stage. And there are all kinds of things you can do to continue down that track. And the world expects you to kind of go down that track until you retire, and then you go on boards and you make money there. But I thought, I think there's more to life than this. I think I want to do something different. I think I want to do something that uses everything I've learned in business to make the world a better place. That sounds very idealistic, but it is totally me. I'm both practical and an idealist in the same breath, and I don't know how that works, but it somehow does with me. So I left my job and I joined Conquest Services. I didn't expect to end up there. That's a whole story unto itself. But one day the dots connected. Someone called me. There was an urgent need at this nonprofit. And I said yes on a Friday night. And on Monday at 10 a.m., I walked in for my first day. So I knew it was going to be a big change going from a global for-profit company to a nonprofit. But it was my 400-year-old company I worked for, interestingly. They did mental health, addiction recovery, and social support services. So a nice broad mission that helps some of the most vulnerable communities among us. So that was kind of exciting. They had a really smart, mission-driven team of 350 people, lots of experts in their field. It's a field, I'm not sure if we have anybody who's in behavioral health, but or physical health care, but it's a tough business with changing industry dynamics. And especially if you're focused on the poor and underserved and comprehensive services versus just the profitable pieces of it, the profitable pieces of it, it is really a tough business. So when I got here, some of the things that really surprised me was there was very little visibility to data. Any data we had was hoarded with probably the CEO and the CFO. And in fact, in an organization with 29 programs, the CEO and the CFO were the only ones that did the budgeting, and nobody saw all the data. It was just, it led to ill-equipped managers because they didn't have the visibility. The organization had lost $5 million in just a couple of years. 28 of the 29 programs were in the red. And in a nonprofit, you're going to have things that don't make money, that can't make money, but you got to do it for the community. And that's okay. But you got to be sustainable as an organization. And we weren't. And we had a 57% attrition rate. Now, my last job in a public company was executive vice president of HR and corporate relations. And so I knew a thing or two about attrition rate. And I really thought that this nonprofit HR director didn't understand the definition because it couldn't be 57. It was 57%. So with all of that, the one thing everybody agreed on amid all the chaos and anger at each other was that there's no accountability around here. And so I took that in, hearing that over and over and over again. And I'm thinking to myself, that doesn't feel like in my gut what the problem is. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to go back 1 second because one little funny aside here. You don't need another picture of me. You're looking at me, but I threw this little news clip in because I decided to use my for-profit manufacturing headshot to give them for the news release. And it's a pretty serious and they tell me now pretty intimidating picture. Our chief clinical officer's son looked at it and said, "Mom, your new boss looks like a spy or maybe even an assassin." So she still teases me about that. The picture's so not who I am, but that's how you pose when you're conditioned to working in those environments for so many years. So we started by moving forward with, in summary, analysis and empathy, back to that toggle, right? So there wasn't a lot of data to look at, but we were digging into every aspect to analyze all these 29 programs, figure out what was going on. But most importantly, I kept saying to myself, lack of accountability or laziness or inability or unwillingness to put in the effort to make things successful, that does not feel like what this workforce is, because these are people with advanced degrees, master's degrees, PhDs, even if they didn't have that, very dedicated people to work in a nonprofit. Any one of them could have had an easier job in another organization, another aspect of their field, making more money with less acute clients. We deal with a tough population who have problems pile on top of people with poverty, mental illness, addiction. It's rough, and it's rough on the counselors. They're all choosing to be here. So let's tap into that. So I'll give you the short version of the story, because it was a long process with lots of steps to go through, but I'll give you the highlights. So first of all, as a new CEO, it was my first time as a CEO. And I had worked beside so many CEOs over my career and gave them advice. I tried to take all of that advice I had given to and put it to good use. So we did a short-term action plan, 5-point action plan. We took 2 weeks with the senior leaders to say, what are we going to focus on while we start to figure out the bigger picture, the bigger strategy? So we got those 5 urgent things in place. We communicated that to everybody to get them aligned. And then we started working through a process. And this is very basic. So one of the biggest things that I've learned is the textbook of how you organize, align, recognize. It's the textbook works, but most organizations don't have the discipline to put in that amount of work, honestly. So what do? I knew they all cared about the mission and our clients. Their vision and mission at the time was hope happens here. And everybody was really married to that because it felt good. And when everything's falling apart in life, a little grain of hope is really important to as a first step to kind of accomplish the bigger goals in your recovery. And so I had to respect that was something they felt in their soul. But at the same time, that's not a vision or a mission, and it's not something you can align to, and not something you can use as a filter for what you're going to prioritize. So we started through a process to, first of all, get everybody on the same page with vision, mission, and values. And it's a very diverse organization. Those 29 programs, they range from a homeless shelter to medical detox, a lot of stuff going on. So you can see the first thing we did is we said, okay, our mission is mental health, addiction recovery, and social support. I actually thought when we started through the process, it might get a little more narrow because it's pretty broad. But what I quickly learned from the team of people, my for-profit me told me it's too broad. Listening to the experts told me this is the superpower, because those 3 things, those 3 areas of need are things that touch every single individual client. Mental health issues can lead to addiction, self-medicating and addiction. You lose your house, you lose your job. Like, all of these things play together. You could be in active addiction because there's childhood trauma that you haven't dealt with. There's so much interplay between the 3 things. If we can just work together as a single organization, which we weren't doing at that stage, that would be our superpower. What made me even more excited was the vision. And honestly, the vision is why I'm here today. It's why I take time to do things like this, because our vision is to build a safe and welcoming community where people survive and live their best lives. And the fact is, people don't seek help for mental health issues or addiction issues sometimes because of stigma. And the only way you break stigma is to shine a bright light on the diseases and talk about it out loud. And so I take every opportunity, even though we're talking about business and leadership, to also, raise a focus on that. We also took some time with values, because I believe that we have to have some agreement on how we're going to treat each other and what's going to be important, so that we know how to move forward together. And so I would say not a day goes by, but certainly not a week goes by where I don't, and the people around me don't talk about specifically how values are guiding a decision. We're always talking about these values when we're making decisions. And that's what values are. That's what you should be doing with values versus just deciding on them and putting them up on a wall. But I think things get really interesting in the middle section, with the strategic priorities. I affectionately call this the most boring strategy you ever want to see because it's so fundamental. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but basically, to align people and engage people, you've got to look at things. You got to have like a common set of data. You've got to have structure and processes around people that help them do their best work. You've got to have development for professionals if you want to keep them. You have to have clear talent management so they know what their goals are. They know what they're going to get measured on. It all aligns up to the big goal of the organization. So we kind of chip through each of these 6 strategic priorities. And although it looks very basic, we're going into the 3rd year of it. It is a lot of work because there's no shortcut to transforming a culture and an organization. And so this framework and all the work behind it, there's lots of goals behind what you're seeing here, is the framework that allows us to bring everybody together and move everybody forward. So how we doing? Welcome to the new conquest. First of all, we swapped out the picture, probably to the horror of our director of marketing, who, when she saw that picture of me, said, where did that hat come from? Don't ever wear that hat again, but I'm okay with it. And the cheap conquest sunglasses. But what we did was we created ownership of the goal from the first step. So rather than trying to hold people accountable after the fact, when they may not even have understood the goal, they may not have had the training they needed, they may not have been in the right position in the organization, they might not have been equipped to do their job, is an after the fact way to think about things. You need to engage people up front, and then accountability just rolls out from that. So we now got the team aligned. We have all of our program managers, all 29, with very clear priorities and metrics that not only help the organization as a whole to sustain, but helps their program, that mission they care so much about, to sustain. Now, we had about 30% turnover in our extended leadership team, which I think is, I don't know what the data says, but I know big turnover is normal in a transition. And I'm really excited that our 3 clinical leaders are pictured there: Dr. Heberling, Dr. Johan, Dr. Martin. Dr. Heberling was here when I arrived, and it was very exciting for her to have, I think, for her to have a business partner and me to have a clinical partner that could really change the world together. And then we brought in the other 2 docs to help us, and it's really a powerful team, very exciting. We started a leadership development program because, in addition to program managers not having their budgets and data and all that kind of stuff, a lot of them are trained clinicians, not trained managers. And to be a leader of people is a whole skill set unto itself, and you got to train people to do that. So we put time into that. We've had a 17-point improvement in retention, and more than that now, actually. I think that slide might be old. So it's still higher than what I'm used to in manufacturing, but it's under the industry average for behavioral health. That's a huge, dramatic change over time. Even though we were losing money, we put $1 million into salaries because one of our issues was we were way under market with the majority of our employees. You just can't operate if you're not paying people at least in range of market, even if it's low. Most programs now are breaking even or better. And we're starting work this year on our next 3-year strategy, which I'm really excited about because I think it will be less boring than the one I just showed you. And there's confidence by all parties who see all the insides of the numbers, the people, and the data and the service that we're going to be here for the long term. It's been an amazingly quick turnaround, and we're not done yet. But I'll echo what I said earlier, that the idea that we focused on the basics, we did the hard work of the basics, I think has made all the difference. So that's the 6th level. That, when I speak with other 6th level contributors, some of them have really big emotional stories, and I love those stories. And I always say when I go to speak, I'm not going to make you cry, but this is the practical example of how this kind of leadership thinking can translate into transformation. And that transformation for Conquest means more people survive and live their best lives. There's a lot at stake with our mission. So, and you can learn more about us. There's our URL right there. So that is the sixth level. That is conquest. And I'm so happy to have been able to share the story with you. I have not been looking at the chat, so I don't know if there's 12 things in the chat now.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Yes,
Yeah.
a lot of people really love that photo. That photo is fantastic.
Which one? That
Somebody
one?
said somebody said you look like Meryl Streep, and I agree.
Somebody said that to me the other day. That's such a compliment. You know what? I love that photo. Can I just tell you, that's at our homeless shelter, and the playground at the homeless shelter had been vandalized and was closed. So there, it's the largest family homeless shelter in Stark County. So little kids are coming in. They've lost their home. Their parents are stressed. All kinds of things are happening. They're going to be safe and fed, and we're going to help their parents, but they're stuffed in a little room and they can't go outside to play. So I made it my mission in life to get funding for a new playground. And that was the opening of the playground. And I am the happiest person on earth right there.
That's wonderful. All right, well, we'll get through some of the questions that have come in. And here's one, and it's kind of it's a specialized question, but we can talk about it generalized too. And Danielle says, what is the overall advice on dealing with addiction in the workplace? Our small company does not have resources for help, but we also don't want someone to lose employment.
Yeah. Okay, so the first thing is that addiction is a disease, and recognize that it's a disease that brings safety hazards and all kinds of difficulty and liability in the workplace. But just like we can treat high blood pressure and other diseases, we can treat addiction. I would love to talk to you offline if you'd like some specific help. But I think that in a nutshell, what I'd say to you is open up the conversation about it and make the resources available. Make it okay for people to seek help. I remember in my last job, my last CEO I worked for was a wonderful human being, Tim Timken, great guy. But I talked to him about, people aren't going to seek help for mental health. When you're in HR, I'm sure some of you are in HR, you start to see the mental health toll that leadership and business pressure can take on people. And if they won't seek help, things are only going to get worse. And I asked him, will you make your safety share for this upcoming team meeting something about mental health? And he did. And he talked about it out loud. Simply talking about it out loud and directing people to resources is a huge first step, whether it's mental health issues or addiction. There is a drug-free workplace program that you could look into. I'm happy to send you any information on the side. You can bring in guest speakers. We work with employee resource groups sometimes. We use that as a foot in the door to go and open up conversation about addiction and mental health. So I think bringing visibility to it is a huge first step.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you. All right, let's see. I saw another question. Oh, Elisa says, you are so confident as a speaker. And she said, was there a moment in time where you found that confidence?
Oh, yeah. So I'm the shy introvert child who writes instead of talks. That's who I am as a 10-year-old. I've always been a creative person. I've always expressed myself creatively, and that's why I wanted to get a journalism degree. I think, honestly, I'll just answer it really honestly. I think sports as a teenager helped me open up a little bit and gain some confidence. I think following my passion and doing things I enjoyed doing got me excited about getting up in front of people and talking. And so you kind of forget you're nervous about it. And then just doing it over and over. I'm 57 years old now. At this stage, I've presented all over the world with translators. Like, I've done it a lot. So, but I think the greatest thing is talking about something you care about. But on a more practical level, I think that, like, there's great advice, there's great coaches, there's great, think about these 3 things when you stand up to speak. There's lots of good advice around that as well, that if you want to develop those skills, you can. But speaking from the heart, I think, makes it a lot easier.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So Felicity says, what advice about leadership should we be teaching our younger staffers that have no patience and want everything now?
So I got to say that I think that sometimes the younger generation gets a bad rap because, I'm just at the age where people 10 years older than me had beautiful defined pension benefit plans, and the company paid their whole retirement and they live comfortably. And I'm the 401k generation, and we had to scrap for everything. But the kids behind us, there's nothing that keeps you with your employer, right? You're on your own for your retirement. You got to be planning right now. So people change jobs more. They're more impatient. What I say, though, when I talk to students is I think that understanding the context of what you do is the path to leadership. How did I came out of college and I was working in corporate communications. Every project I did, I'd ask the business partner, what are you trying to do? What's the bigger picture of what you're trying to do? Like, you want me to write a news release, but is this part of a bigger strategic plan? I'd ask those questions. And I don't know if I learned that form of questioning in journalism school, or if that was always me and I was attracted to journalism school, I don't know. But I learned by asking questions. Asking questions gives you context. If you have context, you can add more value. And literally over my career, because I would do what I was supposed to do, but I'd understand the bigger picture, it helped me expand my responsibility over and over and over again. So I always tell young people, try to understand the context. Always be asking questions to understand context. Make sure you do what your boss is asking you to do. But if you see a way you can add value, you can suggest it. The other thing I would say to any emerging leader is be kind to yourself, because the person you look at who you think is perfect and can do everything right, they aren't perfect and they don't do everything right. I mean, literally, I spilled coffee all over myself today and forgot to get some volunteers some pizza for lunch. So they were starving over at lunch right before I got on here. Like, there are at least 2 things I've done wrong today. But I think that's really important, because sometimes we look at people and think, man, that person's got their act together. We all make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes. We learn from them.
Well said. Thank you. So as we wrap, before we ask you for some final thoughts, another question that came in from Gracie: how can we help your organization?
Yay. Okay. Well, I have to just give you the blunt answer, right? Money. I mean, you could give it if you learned anything from what I said and you see value in it. If you want to donate online, we'd love that. But and also, I think in a larger sense, to help the world, repost information. Be somebody who talks about mental well-being. Be someone that makes it okay for other people to talk about it, and you'll be doing us and the whole world a favor if you help us lead that change toward our vision.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, wonderful thoughts today. So as we wrap, do you have before we move on to our panel, any final words of wisdom for all of our viewers today?
Sure. I am in a perpetual learning cycle myself, and I'm be there till the day I die. And I got to say, my involvement in the book, The Sixth Level, has been so rewarding for me, because I have learned so much from the other leaders that have contributed to it. And one of the things I've learned is that we all have different styles. It's funny, some of the contributors, when we're speaking on panels together, we disagree with each other, because we don't all, it's not a cookie cutter. We all have a different way of approaching things, but there's these common elements that we talked about of engaging others in mutual benefit and justness that underlies all of it. So I think that there are many different types of leaders, and that's good, that's healthy. But that if it's all rooted in a mutual benefit and an empathy for others, man, you can accomplish great things.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time today.
Absolutely.
It's been a fantastic presentation. Any final thoughts before we move on to our panel? Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you.